We are so glad to be back with our third episode. And I am Natalie Jones, have the pleasure of serving as Senior Vice President for Clinical Practice and Innovation at Prolink. Have a very special guest today, our friend and colleague, Lori Armstrong from Inspire Nurse Leaders. Lori, please tell us more about you and what you're bringing today to our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. And I didn't know it was the third episode. Third time's the charm.
There you
So,
go.
this will be your best. Anyway, thank you for the introduction. Dr. Lori Armstrong, founder and chief executive officer at Inspire Nurse Leaders. Inspire Nurse Leaders is a coaching and consulting firm dedicated to the growth and development of nursing and healthcare leaders throughout the country.
And what a great way to start in terms of the description of what you do, because that's one of the first things that we want to talk about. You hate to start off on a downer note, but there's so much opportunity to think about what's missing in nurse leader development
Mhm.
today. When I think about just how I matriculated through leadership, so much of it was happenstance at the
Yes.
time. That's been almost 30 years ago. I cannot believe it. But just thinking about the fact that, when you were clinically very strong, many times you were really placed in leadership
Right.
positions without a lot of preparation. What do you see? Because you're all over the country just
Yes.
like we are. What is missing right now in terms of healthcare
Right.
systems to prepare nurse leaders?
Well, Natalie, I, like you, advanced to nursing leadership because of my clinical expertise. I mean, I don't mean to boast, but I became an assistant nurse manager because I was the best IV starter in the neonatal intensive care unit. So I was extremely qualified to lead 50, 75 people on the night shift. And your story and my story, sadly, we continue to hear it across the country. And I think there are many reasons for that, but now is the time for nursing to really intentionally shift away from that. It really still surprises me that I hear from leaders who were promoted because of their clinical expertise or because they showed some leadership qualities. They were confident in speaking up. They embraced the department and the organizational values, and they were committed to patients' and families' voice in care. Those are leadership attributes, not, in addition to clinical. So they were promoted, and where the ball really drops, the overwhelming majority of organizations really don't have effective or efficient nurse leader support when they enter their roles and during those really sensitive or vulnerable first year or two of nursing leadership. And it's not intentional. It's not intentional. And Natalie, I don't know if you knew this, but it's not unique. The gaps in succession planning and leadership development and support, it's not unique to nursing and healthcare. So my team and I spend a lot of time growing leaders, right? And we're spend a lot of time organizationally on succession planning. That's my hand motion for organizationally, like the whole enterprise. So we spend a lot of time with our succession planning model. And what I've learned, and in this last year alone, Harvard Business Review, Forbes, DDI, Gartner, all of them report overwhelmingly ineffective succession planning across industries. In fact, this one floored me that I thought it was, oh, hospitals don't know how to do this, or nursing really needs to get a handle on succession planning. It's across all industries. And all of these top research organizations surveyed chief human resource officers, so CHROs, heads of HR. Over 75% of the leaders in HR said their organization doesn't do succession planning or doesn't do it well. So I was like, whoa, this is really an issue that leaders in any industry really need to tackle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was a statistic, I believe, that we ran across as we've been doing some of this too, where it's about 8 years before when somebody's in a leadership role before they actually have their very first training opportunity.
Oh
And
my
and
goodness.
as it's somewhere around there. And as we talk to people, it's really quite a phenomenon when you start talking about this, because nursing is constantly, we're the trailblazers. We're really leading the path and
Yes.
creating, and innovating in this space in so many different spaces. But what's unique right now is in some organizations, there's at least four, if not five generations of
Yes.
nurses working alongside each other. And when you start to talk about succession planning, I start to think about some of the conversations that we're having with leaders is what I call almost this speed to competency,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
there's this expectation perhaps of some of our younger generational nurses, and really wanting to take on leadership
Right.
roles at a much higher level than what they functioned in.
Right.
How do you see us really blending that and
Yeah.
preparing from a succession planning standpoint, but also looking at what is needed between those younger
Mhm.
nurses and the more tenured nurses? I know that's like such a complicated question, but there's so
Yeah.
much there.
No, there is. And I have to tell you, the more and more we spend time in succession planning, the more and more time we spend learning and understanding the complexity and the absolute, I'm going to say it, joy of leading five generations sometimes. And I say joy for a very particular reason, because the secret sauce is in the value and attributes that each generation brings. Quick funny story. So we were doing we do leadership cohorts. So 6-month leadership development journeys. And I was on site at a client launching a new cohort. There's about 20 nurse leaders in the room. And I heard Gen Y leaders complaining about Gen Zs. Okay. I heard them. I saw them. I knew their generations. The conversation was exactly what I heard as a new nurse or a new leader from the generation before me. It was the same conversation. So a human's ability to recognize the skills and talent of the upcoming generation, we don't really do a good job at that. And we need to teach our leaders how to recognize, assess, and embrace
Mhm.
each generation. And it's not hard, but there is a process to doing that. And, I look at the younger generations, whether it's Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z, doesn't matter. It's important to them to feel valued, and connection and purpose is important. As you look at the younger generations, the newest coming in, their need to feel valued and to live their purpose is higher, but it's consistent across the human experience. And I call that out for a very important reason, because I think that in leadership development, we often look over that. We jump right to emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
how to communicate more effectively, team building, all of those things vitally important. But what cannot be overlooked is first connecting the individual leaders to what's most important to them, their core values, how they connect with the organization's core values. That's where you always start. But I'm actually really excited about the newer generations coming in. Natalie, I know that I can say this to you with your 30 years experience. I'm not going to tell you how many more years past 30 I am, but I can say this to you. We all have to embrace the change, right? The change in the landscape, the change in how we operate, the change in our workforce, because we're not going back. It's not changing. It's not
Absolutely.
going back. One of my colleagues always says BC, for before COVID. We're not going back to BC before COVID. Things are dramatically different. And we have to, I don't even want to say we have to recognize that. It's an opportunity for us to embrace that. Does that
It
make sense?
absolutely. And I think you hit on so many points. One is there's more that brings us together than separates us in nursing. So being
Yes.
able to definitely recognize that, but also, how you're aligning almost, when you think about BC and now
Uh-huh.
AC after COVID, you know, I think about the fact that we were so innovative during COVID. And
Yes.
now, in some ways, people want that part back.
Hmm.
But there's also there's been some writing about just the mindset of people and leaders and nurses and us reconnecting to purpose because there has been some apathy and
Yep.
just some general concern about how we feel about the profession and are we making leadership attractive, but are we also
Yes.
making nursing attractive?
Oh my God.
You know?
It's so important. And, there's so much sobering data that we can share. And my approach to all of the sobering data, and we can talk about it if you want. My approach to the sobering data is uh, tackle it, talk about it openly, honestly, and coming from a very vulnerable place. And then I transition right into it is a great time to be a nurse, and it is a great time to be a nurse leader. Now,
Absolutely.
depending on how far away I am from the audience that I'm doing that with, or on Zoom or Teams, if I could see it, I may see some rolling eyes, like, what is she talking about? This is a great time. I do. I often say that, like, I can't see that far, but I see some of you may be rolling your eyes. Um, my feeling is that nursing today, with the newer mindset of our own well-being, the newer mindset of being more adaptable to technology and embracing technology, the newer mindset of working with teams and not just RN only workplaces. I look at that. I have chills saying it, Natalie. I I think about that as amazing opportunity to reset nursing. We When we say we're not going back, I don't want to go back, Natalie.
Absolutely.
Let's be honest. It wasn't working all that great.
That's true. It's so true. Sometimes we think it was much better. Our memories are clouded with
No.
the good things, but you're so absolutely there's just you're so right. When you think about just the practical things, and you talked about that aligning with purpose, what are those other sort of first steps that you've seen be really effective in an organization's ability to build a nurse leadership
Yes.
program and pipeline? We've
No.
seen a lot. We usually start with an assessment. I know that's
Yes.
the first step in our nursing process. That's what we've
Yep.
learned, but it's so applicable as well. What are you seeing?
Well, and I'm so glad you said assessment because we all know this. You can't go forward until you know where you are.
Absolutely.
And I think that I'm going to put my old CNO hat on. Remember, I was a CNO for 15 years. I'm going to put that hat back on. It's an honor, one of the honors of my career to be a chief nurse. Um, Assessing where you are. And I'm going to challenge the nurse leaders listening to this and watching us, Natalie, in that writing down a list of the programs that you have in place is the first step. But that's not good enough. It's to measure the effectiveness of the program. And I work with nurse leaders across the country on this. Oh my God, that's so great. That sounds like a great program. Tell me about all of your nurse leaders or emerging staff who went through it. Where are they at 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year? So that measure of success is what you're doing. First of all, are you doing all the things 1, 2, 3, and 4 that are vital components of leadership development? And whatever you are doing, can you measure their effectiveness? Because in this day and age, first of all, a comprehensive leadership development strategy it's I'm going to use a cliche. It's not a nice to have. It is table stakes. It's starting blocks right now. So measuring where you are, throwing out what's not working, or innovating what you have, vitally important.
It's so true. And when you're thinking about that the building blocks, the feedback from your nurses is somewhere in there, whether that's
Yes.
from an engagement standpoint. Sometimes it's more indirect through patient experience
Yes.
scores or quality and safety outcomes. This is really how ProLink got in this passion work, is
Mm,
because we've been working with partners across the
yep.
country, just like you are, and we were hearing just the opportunity to strengthen either the relationship with the manager, or there were just feedback opportunities that
Yes.
they just needed some support
Uh,
and to build out that frontline manager or director level
yep.
type of education. And I
Yep.
know you all have spent so much time. Talk a little bit about that, Lori, because that really has been our synergy and just
Yes.
our discussions along the way too.
Well, you threw something really important in the last couple of minutes. You threw something really important out there, and you talked about quality outcomes, quality and safety. And we are Inspire. Are we have an unwavering commitment to this, that exceptional leadership drives exceptional outcomes. And even earlier, I keep quoting you, Natalie. I'm going to have to write an article. I know we keep saying this. We're going to have to
We're
do
gonna do it. We're gonna do
that.
it.
Nurse leaders are I'm going to paraphrase what you said, they're the linchpin to operations. And that's not just because we're both nurses for a long time and we're in the leadership development space. The data, I always say, asked and answered. You look at nursing, when nursing care is delivered at the highest level, all outcomes improve in hospitals, whether it's quality and patient safety, the care experience, financial productivity. It's all driven by great nursing teams. Nurses can't do it alone. The biggest successes myself and my team has been with my care partners, from physician leaders to RTs to social workers. But nurses, I talk about time and proximity. Nurses spend the most time and are closest with our patients. That's why care drives outcomes, time and proximity. So, when you support nurse leaders, their job is then to turn around and support our very, very vital frontline staff that is in a, you know, tenuous situation at best right now. So, really, really important. And one of the things, when I talked about one of the first steps, is to assess, just like you all do at ProLink, to assess where you are. The very next step from that checklist of, do you have a leadership boot camp? Do you have a leadership residency, mentorship program? I could go down the list. We have 10 really important programs that we recommend. I would say that speaking to the leaders themselves. And if you said, Laura, you could only pick one of those, assess your current programs or talk to your people, there's no competition. Talk to your people. You don't want to build something for people without them. You know that saying, not for us, without us?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, and can I tell you what we hear from our teams that we talk to around the country? We hear that they are very thankful to be in some leadership development, workshops or courses. They are very sporadic.
Mm.
They are not specific to the uniqueness of nursing leadership. Now, I'm thankful for our clients and the organizations we support that have management training. right? Because learning in a room with the other leaders across the hospital is vital. However, look at the complexity of the nurse leader role right now. I don't have to send everybody back to the AONL Insight study. I'm hoping we all have accessed it and read it. If you haven't, please do that. It's free. But looking at a nurse leader's span of control that is larger than any other role in the industry. So 60 to 75 direct reports. It's not just about numbers and busyness. The complexity of being able to be an effective leader when you're responsible for that many people. It changes the requirements for the role, and it changes the person in the role. So having leadership development that is relevant to them, that is real world for them, that they could go to a class and come to work the next day and apply what they learned because it was incredibly relevant. And at Inspire, we always say, we are not a one and done. Natalie, I don't even like to give a 1 hour keynote without like a handout, something that they can download, because I always remember leaving keynotes or workshops being inspired. But then when I got back to work, it was like, okay, the inspiration went away and I didn't have any tool to use. And so I encourage organizations to think about what you're doing. Is it effective? Talk to your people and listen closely for the unique tools that they need to be more confident and have what they need the very next time they go to work.
I think you bring up so many good points. When I think about how some of this work has evolved in organizations I've worked in, sometimes you're not a prophet in your own land,
Oh gosh.
and so really needing sometimes an outside voice to come in
Yes.
and create
Yeah.
and really get up every day and think about leader development, and really having that external voice and external
Right.
listening ears that is a safe place to help an organization
Right.
create. And I was thinking, what I was trying to get to was how those external partners can
Yes.
help an organization to
Yeah.
collaborate to create it, but also the sustainability. That's
Yep.
what I heard.
Yep.
It was a sustainability plan and being able to really stick with them as long as
Yep.
they need, but creating what's right for that organization, because it's not cookie cutter. What
No.
works at University Health System
Yep.
here won't work for University Health System somewhere else.
Right.
So I was just thinking about that process and how you help people to
Right.
really build what they need with that
Mhm.
external ear and lens.
I really appreciate that question and the topic in general. One thing I want to address is the bringing in of an external company, a consultant, or God forbid I'm described as a vendor. Okay.
Partner,
being,
right? It's all
yes,
about partnership.
or a solution provider. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So, can be, sometimes people have had a bad experience, or they have a bad taste in their mouth, or they automatically think about cost. What we bring to the organization, I think about this when you look at leadership development and nursing specific leadership development. What an outside objective company brings in, first and foremost, is they bring to you increased capacity and bandwidth. So many of our partners, we work with CEOs, COOs, CNOs, and we also work with heads of human resources and organizational development. We would prefer to be absolute partners and in lockstep with all of the key stakeholders in the process. So we don't want to replace you. We want to align specifically. We want to help you achieve your goals, and we want to augment and fill in what's missing. That's what we do. And going back to what the assessment phase of any leadership development, we like to come in, dive deep, and get to know the organization as much as if we were brand new employees there and have gone through orientation and learned about every aspect. Because when the leaders eventually go to their leadership development program, their workshop, they're taking a customized online course, they are engaging with a one-on-one executive coach, right? We want our faculty, our coaches, and our consultants to sound just like them. We want them to know where they are in their magnet journey. We want to know what their most recent challenges are. We want them to be familiar with their organizational outcomes, their most recent quality, their recruitment and retention, all of that, because then the relationship is more authentic. The relationship is more relevant, and the participants in the program learn more. That's why we do it. Customization is another one of our, I like to call it one of our ingredients in our secret sauce, is the deep, deep customization.
Awesome. As you were talking, there's so much that comes to mind when I think about what that well supported nurse leader of the future really looks like. And, everybody has been doing the AI,
Yes.
nurse. And it's so interesting if you can build your algorithm the right way, what it comes back with. But because I use AI so much,
Yep.
my AI, my chat GPT knows me so well. So I was playing around because I couldn't find an old picture of myself
Mm-hmm.
in nursing
Mm-hmm.
school. And so I was trying to get AI to revisit that.
Yeah.
And I called myself sort of the nurse whisperer, trying to
Mm-hmm.
build an action figure. And it came back with a heart, of course, but it also came back with a magic wand, which is what I get really excited about, because that magic wand really represents to me being able to problem solve
Yep.
and really
Yep.
think about anything and everything in our imagination that can solve for all things workforce today, which is why I'm with Prolink, a workforce solutions company. So when you think about the ideal nurse and that future nurse and the nurse leader of the future and yourself, what is it that you think is going to really create the right solutions
Yep.
for us moving forward?
Oh, I love that. And I want your magic wand. And with the magic wand, every person, every organization has to listen to me about in terms of leadership development. All right. No, I'm just
Absolutely.
kidding. However, um, it's exciting to think about the nurse leader of the future to me. And in fact, I get a little hyped up around Nurses Week. And, I'm a big Florence Nightingale fan. And there are a lot of reasons I teach the younger generations about Florence Nightingale. I was going to say mother of modern nursing. She's like the great, great, great grandmother now at this point.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
I put it more in perspective of a female leader in the 1850s. Not necessarily about nursing. Of course, she sparked a seismic change in healthcare for what her actions, but it's more through the lens of a female leader in the 1850s who knew how to read at a time when many women did not, at a time when women didn't vote, at a time when women weren't allowed in government. The list goes on and on. And she had an influence that we benefit from now. So I teach the younger leaders about taking her legacy and fueling it through today's landscape. So I think about, you're giving me chills again, Natalie. Thank you for the
Oh, I'm so
question.
excited.
I think about the leader of the future that comes to the role prepared. And
Wow.
that starts in school. It starts in our baccalaureate programs. It starts in our master's program. Like, we want nurse leaders. If most nurse leaders have advanced degrees, why are we needing to fill so many gaps? So coming to roles prepared, right? And one of the things about preparation, that magic wand, I want every nurse leader to be confident to have the confidence in their voice to speak for the patient and their family. When you said heart, the heart for the patient and family, and the confidence to speak for themselves in the profession. It's vital. The nurse leader of the future to come to the table prepared and confident. The nurse leader of the future, you reminded me of this when you talked about innovation, to understand the complexity of change. Because if you don't understand the complexity of change, you're not going to be able to innovate. So putting those two competencies together are absolutely, again, table stakes for the nurse leader of the future. So growth, growth, professional growth, and the ability to grow others is directly related to your own well-being. Because like when you're helping someone succeed, that has great effect over you.
So true.
Right? Sometimes I think people roll their eyes when we talk about well-being. We haven't cracked the code. And I value immensely the perspective of well-being in the younger generations. We did it wrong.
We did.
We did
Absolutely.
it wrong. And it's
They protect
contributing.
themselves. They protect it. Absolutely.
As much as we all need to staff our units and there's other solutions to that. Their commitment to well-being, getting rest and rejuvenation, and their vulnerability in their willingness to talk about their mental health, that's the nurse leader of the future.
Outstanding. So we have talked about so much. As we are talking, I'm just thrilled because I'm learning and thinking and reassessing, and all the things are going on within my mind about my own journey and also my team. But, as people are listening to us, I just wonder about things that they can implement immediately to really support their nurse leaders. We'd love for
Yeah.
them to reach out to us. We'd happily help. But there are things that are low hanging fruit that organizations can do today.
We all talk a lot about purpose and certain leadership development competencies, but the need for organizations to take a look at improving the status of their professional governance, going from shared governance to professional governance. I think that is, I want to say, an easy first step. Nothing's ever easy, right? But if you don't have that management council, what is that venue that these conversations can occur? I know we touched on it a little bit about getting feedback. I'm urging nurse leaders to, the easiest thing for you to do, bring your team together. Bring your team together and sit down and just have an honest conversation. And the first thing you talk about is how much you value their role, how much you care for them, and you want to ease their burden and help them be more successful. And then what you do as the leader is sit back and listen. It's all about that. My favorite new question or newer question is, what is the one thing I can do for you? Right now, what is the one thing? And you can't promise that you can do all of them, but when you take in all that information, you're telling them already that you care for them and you want to make it better. But that's not enough. The proof is in the pudding, in that you actually, that's the first step, and you follow through. One of the most powerful leadership behaviors there is following through on the promises and commitments that you make. Might sound like an easy,
God, I love it.
and it might sound easy. Of course, I promise that I'll do it. No, we are all so busy. We're all lucky we remember what we promised at 8:00 in the morning or on last Monday. But getting with your people, knowing them a little bit better, hearing directly from them, taking that back and saying, okay, this is what we can do now. This is what we're going to do now. That follow through is worth more than many, many other things that you can invest in. Low hanging fruit. I don't know if I could pick the top, but some of the things that we find is most successful and the things that we're asked to do the most is, first of all, having them grow in a program together over time. So if they're assistant managers or managers, having them learn and grow together, role specific growth, because it eliminates that authority gradient. If I'm with all my assistant nurse manager peers, I don't have to worry about what are the managers thinking of me or what are the directors. I can be vulnerable and I can learn. I would also address head on their ability to manage their time. So we can spend a lot of time on competency development. I love competency frameworks. I know that's embarrassing to admit, but the ability for nurse leaders at every level, a charge nurse, assistant manager, manager, director, and we spend a lot of time with our executive clients helping them achieve a little bit more balance in their workday, and then of course managing that work life commitment. The days of double and triple booking nurse leaders and still expecting them to be efficient, that's legacy. That's legacy governance. That's legacy calendar management that we have to move past.
So true. So wise. Wow, we could just talk all day. I mean, even that in itself around time management and protecting your time and where you spend it, it's the most precious commodity. So I am just so glad that today we invested the time
Yeah.
together, really talking about this topic and how we can hopefully be of service to others and
Yes.
have been of service today, sharing so much of your knowledge. So thank you so much,
No.
Lori, for this. What a gift to be a nurse. Thank you.